All right, welcome everybody to another deep dive. We're ready to dig into your sources and unearth some seriously cool stuff, the kind of things that make you go, whoa, I didn't know that.
Absolutely. We've got a real brain teaser on our hands today.
We do, we do.
Hmm.
Today's deep dive is taking us into a historical mystery. It's got it all. Strong personalities, scientific clashes, and even a whiff of a possible cover-up.
Sounds intriguing. What is it we're diving into?
It's the story of the Vero Man. Now, you've sent in some really fascinating historical accounts, scientific papers, really diving into this whole thing.
Okay. And what's the big question at the heart of all of this?
Well, the core question here is, could evidence suggesting humans were in North America way, way earlier than we thought? Could that evidence have been not just overlooked, but maybe even, purposely suppressed?
Wow, okay, that's a big one.
Yeah.
So we're dealing with a potential scientific controversy here.
Oh, absolutely. And over the next little while, our mission isn't to crack the case wide open. I mean, this thing's been debated for over a century.
Right.
But what we can do is get a handle on the key findings, understand why they caused such a stir, and figure out why this story still grabs people's attention.
Sounds like a plan.
All right, so rewind the clock back to the early 1900s down in sunny Vero Beach, Florida. Picture it. Drainage canals are being dug, and bam, history quite literally gets unearthed.
So this was like an accidental discovery, not a planned archaeological dig.
Yeah, it was one of those chance encounters that changes everything. And the main character in this first act is our geologist, Elias Howard Sellards.
Okay, so Sellers digging around in Vero Beach, and what does he stumble upon that makes this whole thing so significant?
Well, imagine this. Human skeletal remains found smack dab in the same layers of Earth as the fossilized bones of extinct megafauna.
Whoa, we're talking mammoths, giant sloths, saber-toothed cats, the whole Ice Age crew.
The whole gang. And that's what makes this so mind-blowing. If those human remains were really from the same time period as those extinct giants.
That would totally rewrite the timeline of human presence in North America, right?
Exactly. It wouldn't just nudge the timeline a bit, it would completely overhaul our understanding of when humans first walked this continent. And Sellards, to his credit, was incredibly thorough. He wasn't just casually eyeballing these bones, he painstakingly documented everything. Where they were found, in which layer of soil, the whole 9 yards.
Really building a case for those humans and those Ice Age animals living together side by side?
Precisely. And to bolster his case, he even found artifacts tools made from bone in that same undisturbed layer of Earth. Not just bones near each other, but actual tools suggesting human activity.
That's a pretty compelling argument. But how did the scientific community react to this?
You know, you'd think they'd be thrilled, right? But remember, at the time, the dominant theory was Clovis first. This idea of the Clovis culture, named after their distinctive spear points, were like the founding fathers of North America, arriving around 13,000 years ago.
So for Sellards to come along suggesting humans were here potentially tens of thousands of years earlier.
Yeah, that's like saying, hey, you know that whole story we've all agreed on? Yeah, scratch that. It all happened much, much earlier.
Okay, I can see how that would ruffle some feathers. So who are the main voices pushing back against Sellards' findings?
Well, leading the opposition was a real heavyweight in the field of anthropology, a guy named Alois Hrdlicka.
Alois Hrdlicka, okay. And what was his main argument against the Vero findings?
His primary counter was that the human burials were intrusive, meaning people were buried later, and those burials just happened to go down into older soil layers where those Ice Age animal bones were already hanging out.
So he's essentially saying that natural processes over time could have jumbled those layers up, making it look like they were all from the same era.
Yeah, that's the gist of it. And you have to understand, Hrdlicka was like the rock star of anthropology back then. His word carried a lot of weight, and he was a staunch supporter of Clovis first. So his skepticism about Vero, well, that really influenced a lot of people.
It's like if the most famous chef in the world tasted your new dish and said, meh, it's okay. That would probably make a lot of people think twice about trying it.
Exactly. So we've got this clash of interpretations, right? Sellard saying, hey, this is big, humans were here way earlier.
Yeah.
And Hrdlicka countering with, hold on, those burials are probably just younger folks mixed in with older bones.
Makes sense. A good old-fashioned scientific debate.
Right. But this is where things take a turn towards the conspiratorial.
Yeah.
Because some folks believe the rejection of the Vero finds wasn't just a matter of scientific disagreement.
Okay, hold on. What are you suggesting? Like a deliberate cover-up?
Well, some people believe just that.
Wow, okay. But why? What possible motive could there be to hide evidence of earlier humans in North America?
Okay, so imagine you've built your career, your whole reputation on this idea of Clovis first, and suddenly this Vero thing comes along and threatens to topple that entire narrative.
Yeah, that's got to be a bit unsettling for those folks. Like, wait, are we saying everything I've been saying for years is wrong?
Exactly. So one argument is that the rejection of Vero was all about protecting that established Clovis first paradigm, like holding on to a cherished belief even when new evidence challenges it.
And if Clovis first was the accepted story, changing that story would mean rewriting textbooks, rethinking museum exhibits, a whole lot of upheaval.
Yeah, it's like someone finding a new chapter of a famous book that completely changes how the story ends. And then imagine someone trying to keep that chapter hidden because it messes with the whole narrative.
Makes sense. So protecting the established narrative, that's one possible motive. What else?
Well, there's the idea of safeguarding reputations. Think about it. If you're a big shot scientist and your whole career is tied to Clovis first, admitting Vero is legitimate would be like saying, whoops, I was wrong all along. And that's not exactly a career booster in the often competitive world of academia.
It's like having to return all those awards you won because it turns out your research was based on a flawed premise.
Exactly. So protecting reputations, protecting careers, that's another possible motive. And then there are even broader implications some folks bring up, like some argue that accepting a much older human presence in North America would challenge certain religious beliefs about the age of the Earth. So you've got this mix of scientific, professional, and even philosophical reasons that could have potentially fueled a desire to bury the Vero findings.
Wow. So it wasn't just about bones and artifacts, it was about ideas and beliefs and who held the power to define those things.
Right. Now here's where the mystery deepens. There are claims that a bunch of material from those Vero Beach discoveries just vanished. Poof, gone.
Wait, seriously? Like the original notes, photos, even some of the bones themselves?
That's what some people claim.
Yeah.
And that missing evidence just fuels the whole conspiracy fire. Because if there was nothing to hide, why would crucial pieces of the puzzle just disappear?
Right. It's like if you solved a crime, but then all the evidence mysteriously went missing before the trial. Makes you wonder, doesn't it?
Exactly. And we're not just talking about things getting lost over time, like papers tucked away in some dusty archive. There are specific claims of artifacts and skeletal fragments just going missing, with some suggesting they were deliberately misplaced or even destroyed. Now, to be fair, record keeping wasn't always what it is today, but still, that missing evidence adds another layer of intrigue to this whole thing.
It really does. Okay, so let's just entertain the possibility for a moment that the Vero findings are legit, that humans really were hanging out with those extinct giants. What does that do to our timeline of human arrival in North America?
Well, some estimates suggest the Vero remains could be tens of thousands of years older than Clovis. We could be talking about humans living here during the last interglacial period, more than 100,000 years ago.
Wow, that's pushing things back quite a bit. And what would that tell us about these pre-Clovis people?
Well, for starters, it suggests they were way more skilled and adaptable than we might have given them credit for. To survive in those harsh Ice Age conditions, they would have needed serious know-how when it came to making tools, finding shelter, and hunting. Plus, imagine the stories those folks could tell. Living alongside mammoths and saber-toothed cats, that's some real-life adventure right there.
Yeah, that would be a different kind of history book.
Yeah.
So we've got this potential for much earlier human presence, more advanced skills, and direct contact with these extinct creatures. What does that do to our understanding of the origins of Native American populations?
That's a huge question. It adds a whole new layer of complexity to the story of how this continent was populated. We might have to completely rethink migration routes, ancestral connections, the whole shebang.
It's like finding out your family tree is way bigger and more complicated than you originally thought.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So where does the Vero Man story stand today? It's not exactly front page news, but it hasn't faded away completely, has it?
It hasn't. While it's not the hottest topic in mainstream archaeology, it still has its dedicated researchers and folks fascinated by alternative histories. And the exciting thing is that modern science might finally hold the key to unlocking some of those Vero secrets.
Oh, like what? What tools do we have now that could shed new light on this old mystery?
Well, think radiocarbon dating. It's like a super accurate clock that can tell us the age of organic materials. We could potentially use it to get more precise dates for any surviving Vero remains or artifacts.
So no more relying on just eyeballing soil layers. We can get hard data on how old those things really are.
Exactly. And there are all sorts of new analytical techniques that could help us re-examine the geological context and artifacts basically double-checking Sellard's work with 21st century precision.
Like a CSI team going back to a cold case with all their fancy gadgets.
Precisely. Plus, you never know, we might find something new at Vero Beach or nearby sites. New discoveries could either back up Sellard's claims or throw a whole new wrench into the works.
You know, this whole Vero Man thing really makes you think about how science works, doesn't it? It's not just about collecting facts, it's about how we interpret those facts and whether we're open to challenging the accepted wisdom.
You hit the nail on the head. Sometimes, a dominant theory like Clovis first can become so ingrained that it's hard to see things from a different perspective. It's like looking at the world through a certain pair of glasses. It shapes what you see and how you understand it.
And that makes you wonder how much of what we think we know about the past is actually shaped by our current beliefs and biases. Are there other hidden truths out there just waiting to be discovered?
It's a great question, and the Vero Man case really forces us to confront that possibility. It reminds us that science is an ongoing process of discovery, reevaluation, and sometimes even a bit of healthy skepticism.
All right, so let's recap this Vero Man mystery. We've got these potentially game-changing discoveries of early human remains hanging out with extinct Ice Age megafauna in Florida. Sellards, our intrepid geologist, makes the case that humans were in North America way earlier than anyone thought.
But his claims are met with resistance, especially from Hrdlicka, who favors the idea of later burials muddling the timeline. And then, to make things even juicier, we've got these claims of missing evidence notes, photos, even bones, which some believe points to a deliberate attempt to bury those inconvenient findings.
And if the Vero findings are accurate, we're looking at rewriting a huge chunk of North American prehistory. We're talking new timelines, new understandings of pre-Clovis civilizations, and a whole new appreciation for those folks who were walking this land tens of thousands of years ago.
It's a story that challenges the way we think about the past and reminds us that there's always more to discover, even in our own backyard.
And it leaves us with some thought-provoking questions. How much do our current beliefs shape what we're willing to accept as truth? And what other hidden truth might be out there just waiting for someone with an open mind and a curious spirit to uncover them? The Vero Man story is a reminder that history is a conversation, not a closed book, and that there's always room for new chapters to be written.